Hello and welcome to IAFA Insider. It's a slightly shorter than usual show this week, so we can dedicate a whole show to each of the wildcard games. We're going to look at the IAFA Shamrock Conference North wildcard game first between the Dublin Rebels and the Carrickfergus Knights. The Rebels, of course, secured home advantage by beating the Knights last weekend. And joining us to discuss this is a former teammate of mine at DCU Saints, a current cornerback with the West Dublin Rhinos, who faced off against both sides multiple times this season, and a man who shares my ambition of one day being a kept man with a rich lawyer at his side. Sam Monson of the Rhinos, thanks for joining us.
Hey Emmet, how's it going?
Great stuff. Well, Sam, obviously, long season for you guys. You had some really interesting scorelines, I think is the best way to put it, with both sides. Like, a 2-0 game in one of them with the Knights, and of course, a 7-6 win with the Rebels in another. So what I'm going to start off is just break down the teams themselves individually. So first off with the Knights, and you obviously played mostly defense, so feel free to focus on there, but give me your offensive views as well. What was it that they were able to do right, and where do you see any deficiencies they had when you were facing up against their row?
Yeah, I think a lot of our results this year were more down to what we were doing and what we weren't doing than the opposition. I think when we were able to put it together on defense, certainly we were able to shut down most teams. When we ran into the Trojans, they're a slightly different matter, and it was also the end of the season when we were kind of running low on personnel, so that was always pretty unlikely to stop them. But, we were able to shut down most other teams when we played well. When we didn't, that's when we had the problems. And I think our offense struggled more or less all through the year. I think we only ever had a few big plays, a few sustained drives, and that meant that whenever we were in close games, they were in ugly, low-scoring close games, and that's where you start getting those weird results. I think the Knights have got some talent on that team, especially, they've got some speed out wide with their receivers, which is interesting because in this league, that doesn't necessarily do you an awful lot of good. Like when I was playing wide receiver with the Saints, it was an extremely frustrating position to be in because, even if you burnt the guy deep every single time you stepped out, 75% of the passes that come your way are underthrown, so you're going to have to fight back underneath the guy you just beat. So, the Knights have a similar kind of thing. They got some speed out wide, but the question is, can you get those guys the ball deep down the field? And I don't think there's anybody in this league that can consistently and reliably do that. And I think they had one deep ball get complete down the sideline against us, and they had another couple of shots that we managed to deflect away. But if they can exploit that against a team like the Rebels, it's certainly big play potential.
And what was their pass protection like against you guys? Were you guys able to get much penetration?
I think that it was mixed. I think most teams in this league, the offensive line, in fact, both lines tend to be extremely inconsistent. I don't think any team has an absolutely lights out offense or defensive line. I think it just depends, it depends on the play, depends on the situation. Every team's going to give up some pressure, and every team is going to struggle at times. I don't think they have a poor line. I think they've actually got, all of the northern teams actually seem to have a lot of size going for them, whereas a lot of the southern teams seem to struggle for linemen, seem to struggle for outright size. It's an interesting divide, north-south in the league.
And I suppose then just, obviously when you were sitting on the sidelines, you got a chance to look at how the Knights' defense worked. Was there anywhere you'd see opportunities for the Rebels to really penetrate them?
I think the Rebels, the key to them is the running game. They've got a guy in Mackey who's just huge for a running back in this league. He's a guy that if they can get him running, if they can get him 10 yards to build up speed, he's extremely difficult to take down in the open field. The Knights, if they're going to stop that run, they need to do it at the line of scrimmage. They need to sell out. They need to chop him down before he gets going, because once he's into the second and third level, it's too difficult to stop him going.
And so it's like, with that going on, like, were the Knights pretty good from what you could see at stopping the running game this year, or is that an area you think that, the Rebels will be able to consistently get Mackey in there?
I think with the Rebels' size up front, they're one of the few teams down here that actually do have a reasonable size in their offensive line. I think they can generate movement. They can get Mackey moving. I think that's where they're going to have to look to do it. I think they should be able to get movement against the Knights. If the Knights are going to stop the run, I don't think they're going to be able to do it with their kind of base defense. I think they're going to have to actually consciously change things and deliberately come up and stop that run and basically dare them to put the ball in the air and to beat them that way.
Well, that leads nicely to the passing game the Rebels are going to be using. Like, obviously, you played corner against them a couple of times this year. How consistent is it?
Yeah, I was actually playing safety this year.
Sorry.
And it's interesting that we basically couldn't convince teams to pass against us much this year. And the first game the Rebels started off, they came out and they like to work the seam down the middle. And they came out and they attempted that 2 or 3 times, I think. And we were closer to all of those passes than their receivers were. And they went away from it. You know, they saw that was not going to happen. And coincidentally, they also were able to run the ball pretty handily against us in that first game. So they basically just ran the ball for the rest of the day and didn't threaten the air. I don't think their passing game is as good as it has been in previous seasons. And I think if you can make them pass, that's definitely where you want to be against them. I think if you're going to choose, you know, facing the run all day or facing the pass all day, I think you'd much rather take your chances with the ball in the air.
And so with that in mind then, like, do you think that the Knights would be competitive in this game if they decide to overload up the box, like try and really just force the Rebels like to make a decision with the running game?
I think that's what they have to do. You know, the Knights have got some talent. They're able to turn up, you know, on the right game. I think the blueprint for beating the Rebels is pretty simple. You've got to load up. You've got to stop that run at the line of scrimmage. You've got to make sure they can't get into the secondary, and you're just going to have to dare them to put the ball in the air and beat you that way. And you know, they might do it, they might not, but that's the way you're going to have to threaten to or make them play. And I think the Knights have the ability to do that. I think most teams in this league have. It's just a case of being disciplined more than anything else. You don't have to have the size if you're crowding the box with 8, 9, 10 guys. You just have to be able to make sure you've got every gap nailed down. You've just swarmed the place with bodies.
And the Rebels, of course, secured home field with that win at the weekend over the Knights. Is that going to be important, do you think, in this? Because obviously, like, getting bodies to travel is an important thing, but with it being a playoff game, will it really be a factor?
I think home field is always huge in this league. Teams just don't travel well. There's the only team I think that really travels well is the Trojans, and that's only because they have such an absolutely massive squad at the moment. They came down for their second last game against us with a traveling squad of 40 plus people, which is just unheard of. You know, most teams don't have that squad, period, let alone, you know, that squad to take down on a traveling game. It's going to be huge. I think the Knights are definitely major underdogs, and even more so that they're on the road and they're going to be traveling with a somewhat depleted squad inevitably.
And I suppose, well, that leads me nicely to what I'm guessing will be the more predictable part of this interview, Sam. How do you see this game going?
It should be a relatively comfortable Rebels win, I think. I'd like to see the Knights put up a good fight, and honestly, I'd like to see them win, but I can't really see it. I think the Rebels should be too good at home.
And finally, Sam, just for people who don't know about your other life, you work, of course, for Pro Football Focus from home with your gorgeous beard, unless it's gone.
It's gone, unfortunately.
It's gone, sadly. I'm looking at Sam's Skype avatar here during the interview, guys, and believe me, it's a manly beard. So that's unfortunate. So just what are you guys doing during the off-season leading up, I suppose, to fantasy season and the regular NFL season?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff in the off-season. We've always got content to put up on the site. The big thing for us this off-season is training up some new analysts and tightening up our analysis procedures, making sure all of our guys are on the same page, tightening up any kind of loose things that we've been working on over the last couple of years, and just generally improving what we do. We've got a few irons in the fire in terms of deals we're trying to make with various people, but those kind of go on quietly behind the scenes while we get on with the important stuff of being able to gear up for the new season again.
Well, that's great, Sam. Listen, thanks for joining us on the show, and enjoy your off-season.
No problem. Thanks. Anytime.
Great stuff. And before we go, we just got a few announcements to make, and then the results from the last weekend of the regular season and the continuing results from IAFL 1. First off, some of you may have seen on Facebook earlier this week that the Atlantic Cup fixtures and ticket details have been announced. Tickets are free, but if you go to the IAFA Ireland's Facebook page, and you'll see a link there for the Atlantic Cup Eventbrite page. Tickets are free, like I said, but they want you to book in advance and to let them know if you're going for 1 or 2 days. The schedule has also been confirmed. We had the provisional schedule in the last show. So on Saturday 29th of June, it'll be the Amersfoort Untouchables from the Netherlands against the Belfast Trojans. And apologise to our Dutch-speaking listeners. Hi, Jerome. And that'll be at midday. Then at 3:30, Trinity College Dublin will play the Brussels Tigers of Belgium, and that is the second semi-final. Then on Sunday, we have the third, fourth place playoff at midday again, and the final itself is at 3 p.m. Go to the IAFA's Facebook page for full details. And finally, we'll just get to the results from the last weekend and the fixtures for the week ahead in IAFL 1. In Week 15, Shamrock Bowl Conference, Dublin Rebels 24, Carrickfergus Knights 7, West Dublin Rhinos 0, Belfast Trojans 31, University College Dublin 12, UL Vikings 27. And in IFL 1, Mullingar Minotaurs 0, North Kildare Reapers 32, and Waterford Wolves 12, Tullamore Phoenix 2. And just finally, the fixtures for IFL 1 this weekend. We've got two games. Both of them start at 2 p.m, and they're on Sunday. Meath Bulldogs at the Waterford Wolves, and Dublin Dragons at Drogheda Lightning. The Bulldogs Wolves game is in the RSC Waterford, and the Dragons and Lightning game is in St Oliver's Community College, both games kicking off at 2 p.m. But for now, from a slightly abridged version of IFA Insider, with us looking ahead to the South playoff game next week, I've been Emmet Ryan, and thanks to my guest Sam Monson for joining me.